you're not signing high profile kickers.
That's very true. That's very true. Julie Coonsgreen says, great platform. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. Thanks for the comment. Definitely share this out. Would appreciate anybody else who tunes in. Thank you for everybody who's watching already. Krish, what are your thoughts on the kicking woes so far?
I mean, it looks like semi-pro out there having guys who are not, kickers kicking. I mean, the wide receiver from Wyoming, he made a couple good kicks. Billings, defensive line, like he made a couple short kicks. If he had to kick 25 yards out, he would miss terribly. So I think a lot of it comes down to, and we'll touch on this later, is teams not willing to spend money. You have owners who are, some of them are like ATM machines, like Billings and Wyoming, right? But some of them are not. So some of them don't want to have kickers and some of them do. My personal team, it took us till week 4 to add a kicker when we needed a kicker all season. And the excuse was, oh, we have a DB that can kick. I'm like, no, he can't kick. He can't. So, it's all hearsay type stuff,
Yeah.
I would agree. I mean, we've seen some interesting roster decisions by all of these teams so far this season, especially at the kicker position in particular. It seems like a lot of teams are trying to, for lack of a better term, save that roster spot and give it to another position where they needed a little bit more depth. But it's had very bad results at this point. No matter if you had kickers or didn't have kickers, I don't have the stats right in front of me. I do know that as a league, I think we've only converted 1 field goal in league games so far. And the extra point situation has not been much better. Kickoffs, you could argue, have been decent, as well as some other situations. Like I know Brandon Stewart had a drop kick from Omaha that was pretty decent. But, there are some other factors in this. Obviously, we do have blocks that happen, stuff like that. But you have to also consider the fact that these guys are trained to kick, or at least the 4 or 5 kickers that are rostered at this point. There should be a little bit better performance from the kickers who are actual specialists. And right now I feel that they aren't making the best case for all these teams carrying a specialist. What are you guys' thoughts on that take?
I agree 100%. I think you nailed it.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one.
Gotcha. Okay, so one of the topics that we wanted to discuss was Arena Football Statements, preseason power rankings. Now, obviously things have changed quite a bit, and I believe it's 4 weeks at this point that it's been. And obviously some of these teams were ranked pretty well because honestly, I'd argue that they're probably right where they belong in terms of the record. But I wanted to go ahead and get both of you guys' thoughts on these at this point. But at number 8, they had the Topeka Tropics. Number 7, Rapid City Marshals. Number 6, Gillette Mustangs. Number 5, Billings Outlaws. Number 4, Southwest Kansas Storm. Number 3, Omaha Beef. Number 2, Salina Liberty. And number 1, Sioux City Bandits. So, Krish, let's go to you first. What are your thoughts on these preseason power rankings?
Sure. So you look at the top 3 of those rankings. They stay pretty consistent. It helps when you have owners just throwing cash at players. The CIF is a buy-to-win league. The teams that win are the team that spend the most money. I'll say number 4, my Southwest Kansas Storm. We play like we're a number 4 team. I know you're going to say, oh, we lost by 30 last night. That score doesn't tell. They were playing dirty. They were getting a lot of extra penalties. That was a whole different game. So if we had this offense that we had now, the first 2 weeks, I'm pretty sure we would have won both games. We would have beat Omaha. I'm really, really confident. We're number 4 right now. I think we can get up to number 4 by the end of the season. Back up to that. I know right now we're 7 or 6, but Topeka, I mean, I have to give my shout out to Lorenz. I wasn't high on him to begin the season, but I did message him the other day, giving him some respect. Like I do respect him. I think he really come to this level and shown why he belongs. Same with Max Novak. I was skeptical, I was like, with Tri-City Rush, like big deal, semi-pro football, but he's coming up to, and he's showing why he belongs. And then Rapid City, they suck. It's not that the coaching sucks. I love Antoine Smith. He's a solid dude. I think he belongs. I think he should be the head coach there, and I think they're probably making him very upset being the defensive coordinator. But that's another thing. They have solid receivers. Kevin Chisholm is amazing. Taj Tobert. I mean, that's the next thing we're going to talk about, so we'll get into that. But their O-line is pretty good. They have Tyler McGaw, Shea Roberts. I think Shea Roberts is one of the best linemen in the league. If you watch what he did outside of the LFA, their offense was consistently putting up 20 plus 30 points a game outdoors. So he's coming back indoors. And you know, I have to give a shout out. They had a wide receiver, running back quarterback last week, Jameer Bird. You know, he threw 2 touchdowns. And I saw him running around trying to make plays. And so a lot of respect to you. Billings, Vincent Espinoza is really, really good. He's a really solid quarterback. And I'm really happy that he's in the right system that utilizes all his skill sets, because in the past he hasn't. And now he's finally somewhere where I feel like he can stick. I know he won an outlaw jersey. Salina Liberty, you know, a lot of respect for Coach O. You know, maybe I think Coach O gets talked about a little too much, but you know, it helps when you can spend all the money to win, like I said. But I mean, you have a Division I quarterback who was one of the best D1 quarterbacks in the ACC and in the country, completion percentage wise, with Gerard Evans. Gerard, I'll tell you one thing about Gerard, and this is no disrespect to you, Gerard. Gerard is not even fully in shape, and he's playing the way he's playing. I mean, if he hits the gym, you know, which he will, I'm sure, during the bye week, I can only hope, he will be incredible. He's going to take a huge leap. The backup, Jonathan Johnson, is really good. And then we go to Omaha, and we go to, you know, Alaska boy, Ricky Burtz. And, you know, I respect Ricky. I think he's a solid dude. Now that team should be in the IFL, and they play in the CIF because it's easy for them to win, and you know they have their whole thing. But they have the resources. They have everything they need to go to the IFL, considering some of the organizations they have there. But I think Tommy Armstrong is great. Coach Kaiser is great. They are a championship contender in my mind. And then I think your rankings, like, maybe they were a little off from where they were now, but they weren't so far off. They're not as far off as everyone thinks they are. I think they're pretty on point, to be honest, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's, you know, a couple arguments that could be made. Obviously, Gillette's ranked really low. I'd probably argue they belong at number 1 at this point. But, you know, Sioux City, you could definitely make a case for them being number 2 or number 3. Salina, definitely top 3 team. Omaha, probably top 3 for sure. Top 4 for sure, I guess I should say, because they've played 2 games, not 3. You know, Billings, 2-1, they're playing well. And then those bottom 3 are, for me, really, you could argue they're interchangeable at this point. But Ducon, why don't you take a chance to kind of reevaluate your own power rankings?
Man, first of all, I got to say that Krish is a damn good analyst. I don't know if I can say that on your show, Sam, but he's really good. Honestly, man, if I had to redo it, I'd do it like this. Number 8, Rapid City Marshals. They are a great organization, but the number one reason I'd put them there is run defense. Other teams that are watching film, they're like, just hand the running back the rock. Nobody wants to tackle except for Derek Dyer. And I'm sure Antoine Smith's just lighting the defense up about that. But, you know, no disrespect to their organization. I think they'll get it figured out. Number 7, I'm sorry, Krish, but I'd have to put the Southwest Kansas Storm at number 7 right now. That doesn't mean they can't get up to 4 by the end of the season. I think that they showed a lot of promise last night. There was a lot of good things going. I think Devlin Isidore is actually a great quarterback, and I think that the O-line's starting to get it together a little bit. Number 6, I would have to put the Topeka Tropics. I think that their offense is amazing. Krish mentioned the connection between Lorenz Stefan and Max Novak. Those guys are clicking. I mean, it's incredible what they did that last game. Number 5, the only team I'd leave number 5. Sorry, Sam. I got to leave Billings there for now. I think that they're playing exactly how I thought they'd play. I'd leave them at number 5. But number 4, I'd have to put the Salina Liberty at number 4. And the reason for that is because their defense is not a Salina Liberty defense. That doesn't mean they won't get there. Obviously, Coach O just barely signed Evan Ray, who had 2 interceptions in the championship game last year. So he's back. Coach O definitely notices they need some help on that defense. So, but number 3, I'd actually put the Sioux City Bandits until they can really get their defense clicking like I thought that they would. They've got all the pieces. They got all the pieces to be number 1. Number 2, Gillette Mustangs. They surprise me on all levels. I think that Coach Walker has put together a phenomenal roster, and their defense is just insane. I'm blown away by how well their defense plays. And number 1, I'd put the Omaha Beef, and defense is the reason why. They are their opponents average 17 points a game, and in indoor football, that's really low. Of course, you got Rayshon Kaiser, who was a defensive genius when he was playing, and he just knows how to build that roster. So that's how I'd redo it for now.
That's completely fair. I would still argue that Gillette should be number 1, but that's
okay.
Personally
okay. Let's argue.
No, that's completely fair. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised to see the parity at the top of the league this year so far.
Yes.
I mean, you look at it, you got Gillette that's 3-0. You got Sioux City that's only lost 1 game. You got Billings that's only lost 1 game. The Beef are still undefeated. I mean, it's quite honestly surprising to see all these teams doing so well so early on. Now, obviously, it's going to balance out as the season goes on, but I think it's been a pretty solid season so far. Even the games that have been against the teams that are currently winless have been competitive. I mean, a perfect example is that last game between Salina and Topeka. Topeka took them to task. I mean, basically, if it weren't for a late score and a converted extra point attempt by the kicker and Salina, they don't win that game. And Topeka's finally got their first win as a franchise. But let's go ahead and discuss Taj Tolbert. Taj Tolbert was originally in Southwest Kansas. He is now with Rapid City. What are your guys' thoughts on this move? Krish, let's go to you first. You cover the Southwest Kansas Storm.
Sure. So, Taj was a topic of discussion, through social media, and he was really getting hated on. I feel bad for the guy. I mean, like, constantly. Like, it was nonstop. Like, he sucks, he's this, he's trash, get him out of here. After the first pick. And so after that, I knew he wouldn't work out here because no one really invested in him and wanted to see him succeed. And I'll say that, we should have gave him more of a chance to succeed. He had a horrible offensive line, and he was not given the proper opportunity to succeed here. Now, that's partly on him. I'm not going to act like he's all good and everything. Like, he made some poor decisions. I mean, throwing the ball right down the middle, 8 interceptions in 2 games is unacceptable. But he knows that. Todd's the type of guy where he's a leader, and he's going to, I feel like, make a mark on wherever he goes. And I'm a huge fan of Taj. I think he's a great guy, and I really hope Rapid City is an interesting spot because they have a decent line. They have good receivers. I mean, who knows? Maybe he can work out. Maybe he can be the guy who can come in and throw 3 touchdowns and, not lead them to a win necessarily, but make them score over 30, 40 points. So I think it's a good move for them. And I think I also think that they are at a point right now where it's hard for them to get anyone. I know they were talking to a certain quarterback and that kind of fell through. I wonder why. Couldn't be money, right? But I think that I think he's a good fit for now.
How did I know you were going to mention that? Ducon, what are your thoughts about Taj Tolbert jumping over to Rapid City midseason?
I honestly think that it's half desperation and half a good move. I agree with Krish. I actually think that Taj is going to do about twice as good in Rapid City as he did with the Storm. Credit to the O-line. Definitely the Storm O-line was not good. That first game was awful. The second game was just as awful. But I think that like Chris said, there's some great receivers over there in Rapid City and a decent O-line. And I think with a little practice, Taj could do pretty good. And the reason I say that is because last year he played for the Bismarck Bucks in the first few games of the season. And with Taj starting, I think the Bucks went 3-2. And then they benched him in favor of another guy. And the Bucks never won a game the rest of the season. So given the right pieces, I think Taj is actually a decent quarterback.
I'm glad you brought that up because, he definitely did play pretty solid with Bismarck. And then, one thing led to another, and now he's over in the CIF trying to get the chance to start and kind of revive his career. And it didn't go so well with Southwest Kansas. And I was how do I want to put this? I was a little surprised by how it went, but a lot of the issues that he had in Southwest Kansas were very similar to what you could see on film with Naz when he was the quarterback there. He was a little hesitant to run the ball, which I thought that he should have leaned on his athleticism a little bit more. But that's my main criticism of him. I think that he was put in a bad spot, and Southwest Kansas knows that. They've made a lot of moves to improve their roster so far, and hopefully they can find some momentum here, which I expect they will over the next couple of weeks, just based on how they've played over the past couple of weeks. So we had one more topic that we wanted to get to that I think was pretty big on everybody's mind. But as we all know, there was a player recently released from the Rapid City Marshals who kind of went on a little bit of a rant about the CIF and in particular Rapid City. So with that in mind, a lot of people have been thinking that Rapid City is nearing the point of potentially folding. So with obviously we are just speculating here. None of us have insider information on this per se. But what are you guys' thoughts? Ducon, let's go to you first. Do you think Rapid City is on the verge of folding, or do you think this is a lot to do about a little?
Absolutely not. This is a common theme every single season. Somebody gets released, feels like it was an unjustified release, and then they go on a rant on social media telling about how the organization's crap and it's going to fold. It barely happened with the Wichita Regulators as well. Coach gets released, and then he goes on a rant about how they're going to fold, and it's just, and he's done it before. So I don't think Rapid City's in any kind of trouble, to be right honest with you. I think that the Johnson family's got good control over it. They actually have a pretty good fan base. They're expecting some good numbers on their Saturday night games, like close to the 5,000 range. I mean, they've got a great fan base. I think that they're not hurting too bad.
I would agree. I mean, I personally think that this is exactly what you just pointed out, is that it's, while some of the things that he said might be true, when you really look at what he said, the content of his message and of his post, you understand that a lot of that stuff is just indoor football. It's just how the things go. I mean, you're not necessarily going to be in a 5-star hotel, that's just not feasible for some of these teams and stuff like that. So, I don't want to necessarily bash on the player, but I think he was upset. He had just been released. That's not necessarily the best time to be posting on social media about your inner thoughts. But, it's definitely sparked conversation, to say the least. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so let's acknowledge this, right? They're probably getting treated like crap. I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? Like, there's some of these teams, they can't, like you said, a lot of teams can't afford these 5-star hotels and all this stuff. But there are, I think a lot of these guys see teams like in other leagues, like Jacksonville, Vegas. I mean, I don't feel bad for any of those guys because I know those guys are getting treated really, really well. They are. They just, they're being put on. If you add up the money they can make, from my calculations, the money they can make in some of these big places, they can make $80 to $100K a year if they market themselves right. If you get brand deals, if you get different things. And then you have guys in Rapid City. Now, yes, it was a player choice to come back to Rapid City. I understand that. But there's a lot of things when a team is like a lot of people look at the Northern Arizona Wranglers are an outlier to this, in my opinion. A lot of teams look at teams having a bad year and then they can just come back the next year. When teams have a bad year in arena football, frustration show. Everyone's upset. No, it's not like, oh, they can lose a game and they can, laugh about it. No one's laughing. It's upsetting to everyone. I guarantee you there's so much hate and frustration down there, and they lose this weekend, everything's going to boil over for them. And so maybe he should have handled it in a different way. Maybe he shouldn't post all that. But like a lot of that stuff is true, but it was his choice to come back type thing. I think there's a lot of other avenues he could have taken. I know, certain teams had contact with him to bring him in. I wish nothing but the best for him. Yeah. He's been a day one Facebook friend, so I really hope that he succeeds. But I also think that you know what you're getting into, right? The players who came back to Rapid City knew what they were walking into. Wes Johnson is a great guy. I believe in Wes. I really do. I think he's a family man. Like, he lived in Wyoming. He goes to South Dakota apparently every game day, which I do see him there. So on YouTube stream. So and they have they have one of the upper echelon broadcasting in the league. So they're getting there. They are. They just have to keep going.
I would agree. I mean, there's obviously some stuff going on behind the scenes that is making players unhappy. But at the same time, I think there is better ways to handle it. And as you pointed out, he knew what he was walking back into. They took over midseason last year. He knew what they were walking into in terms of what the previous owners had done, had left them with, and then also where they stood when the season ended. I don't think anybody knew that quite as good as he did. So to see him kind of make that rant, I was surprised. I know he's hurt. He obviously invested a lot of time and energy and effort into Rapid City, and he wants to see them succeed, and he wanted to be a part of that success. That's why he stuck around through all the stuff. I would just like to say that Rapid City, the ownership that is there now, inherited a mess. Okay, more than anyone cares to tell anybody publicly. So a lot of this stuff that I think they're dealing with was not their own making. And I don't want to say that they aren't making mistakes. They might be, but I would venture a guess if they had started with a clean slate with, maybe relationships that hadn't been damaged beyond repair and stuff like that within their community, then I think maybe we're seeing a different situation entirely for Rapid City.
Yeah, and I agree. And I also think, like, it's really difficult for everyone involved. It's just it's hard. Some of these teams, like, I see Matt in the chat. I mean, Matt, you have it easy. You don't have it hard at all. You're part of an organization that is, I won't call it the cream of the crop because I'll never give them that much credit. But I think that they're a really good organization and they do everything right. And it's not hard for those guys, but for a lot of these guys, like, I don't want to comment on this particular player's financial situation, but maybe he needed to live in that housing, right? Maybe he, who knows? It could be behind on rent, needed to stay there, and he got cut and sent home. Like, some of these guys live across the country, so there's a lot of things that have to be considered there.
100%, and that's the thing that I think that. When you're looking at it from an outside perspective, you can take a more objective view. You're not in it. You're not the player that just was released. You're not the person who just lost your housing, like you just said, just lost your paycheck. So obviously it's a lot more personal for him, but I just think there was maybe different ways to handle it as all. That's all. And like you said, I wish the best for him. I hope he does get signed by another team because I know he's a solid player and I know he deserves a chance. But it's one of those situations where it's definitely a bad look for everybody involved, unfortunately. Chris, well, I'm going to go ahead and invite you to stick around. Our indoor football correspondent has not responded to me, so if you would like, you can kind of carry into the IFL segment with us.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into the IFL segment. One of the things that I wanted to cover with both of you guys is obviously last night during the game, we watched Darius James Peterson go down with an injury, and Zach Reeder had entered the game. First of all, what are your thoughts on the injury and Reeder's performance last night?
So
Let's go to Chris.
So yeah, I'll just hit it off here. That was an unnecessary play. I mean, watching that over, like Green Bay defenders should have, like that was a little extra. He didn't need to do all that. He could have maybe like sacked him normally, but he decided to pull him down. Like, number one, that should have been face mask. Looking at it, and number two, it's like that's a serious injury. I mean, when your head goes back like that, like, I don't want to say that's career ending for him, but that looked like something that's long-term IR, to be honest with you. Like, he needs to go get a neck checked out and everything. I think you talk about Reeder, right? Young quarterback, from Upper Iowa, I believe. He played all right. I mean, he's a rookie. Like, I'm sure they're gonna bring someone else in. I'm sure Dave is already, DMing guys on Facebook trying to get him to come. But yeah, I think he did okay.
I would agree. I mean, considering he was thrown into the fire without very much preparation. Ducon, what are your thoughts on this one?
Man, first of all, my heart just breaks for Darius James Peterson and the Iowa team and fan base. I know that the moment it happened, a lot of the Iowa fan base was like, "There goes our season," and that's never a fun feeling for anybody. But first and foremost is Darius James Peterson. I hope he's okay. I'm sure they've got a great medical staff. I agree with Chris. It looks like long time IR from the look of it. Reeder being put in, he made a couple very nice throws in that game. But you could tell that there were some jitters. I think Dave noticed that, and his play calling was, let's just run the ball for a little bit, let the jitters settle down a little bit. And honestly, I think he showed enough promise that if they had to ride him and he got a lot of practice in with their receivers and running backs, then I think that he could be a pretty viable quarterback for the organization. But I have to agree with Krish again, that I'm sure Dave's looking for a good veteran out there to come in and try to salvage the season. Starting out 0-2 is never fun, and they're in a pretty tough Eastern Conference.
And I also want to point out something. I know you're probably going to get to this. Green Bay just made a huge trade. So we'll touch on that. But
yeah. No, go ahead, man. That's not on my radar. I had not seen that yet.
So Massachusetts signed this player, linebacker named Calvin Bungie, right? Calvin Bungie played for the Steelers, and he played for them for like 2 games, came to Pirates. He had 2 sacks, 4 assists, and the Pirates have decided to trade him to the Green Bay Blizzard. So he'll be headed down to Green Bay.
Wow.
What did they get in return?
Future considerations.
Okay. Interesting. I wonder if he was about to be cut or something. That's kind of odd. Interesting. Well, thank you for filling us in on that. That is kind of the point of the show. Thank you. So let's move on to the next big piece of information that's come out of the IFL recently, which everybody wants to talk about. Drew Powell has also landed on the injured reserve list. Pardon me. And the Arizona Rattlers have signed 41-year-old Chris Dixon, an IFL Hall of Famer. What are your thoughts on this, Ducon?
Oh man, this is actually really exciting for me. I'm excited about it. First of all, Jorge Reyna, the backup there in Arizona, he's actually a very good quarterback. He showed some great promise for San Diego Strike Force last year. And I think they're rolling with him. I think that the statement that the Rattlers released specifically said that they brought Dixon in case that they just really needed a guy that could step in that veteran role. 41 years old's tough, but there's hope for 41-year-olds in the game. Last year, Robert Kent for the Gunslingers, I think he was 42. and he was in the MVP discussion in the National Arena League. So the older guys can get it done if they have the right protection. I think Chris Dixon's a little bit smaller than Kent. So, who knows if he can absorb a big time hit from somebody that's 300 pounds and fast. But 41, it can be done. And I think it's a smart move for the Rattlers to have somebody with a veteran presence that they can call on if needed.
I would agree with that assessment. I personally would have liked to have seen them bring in somebody who's a little bit younger, a little bit more current with their career. It will be very interesting to follow and see how he performs, given the fact that it has been, I believe his last time playing was 2017 with the CIF, actually. So it'll be interesting to see how he does for Arizona, but I know he lives in the Arizona community. So, I mean, it's kind of cool to see him play for his local team. So I'm sure the fan base out there is very happy. I personally, like I said, I was a little taken aback by it. I was shocked to see that he was back, but it's interesting for sure. I'll definitely be following Arizona a little bit closer with him there now. But moving on to sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to admit that when I first saw that they signed Chris Dixon, I thought it was a coaching role. And I had to reread the statement like 3 or 4 times to realize he's actually being signed as a player.
That's completely fair. His last time in the IFL, if I'm not mistaken, was as a head coach for Billings,
right?
The Billings Wolves, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, that's a perfectly fair assessment as well. I was kind of, like I said, I was kind of surprised that he's coming back to play at his age. But I mean, we've seen a lot of guys, like you said, Robert Kent, and then there was, Terrell Owens in the Fan Control Football League last season at 48. There was, I'm blanking his name, former Jaguars kicker who played with the Sharks last season for a brief time at 50.
Yeah, Mike Hollis.
Thank you, Mike Hollis. So, I mean, there are guys that have set a precedent that the older players can play, especially at positions like quarterback and kicker. So a little bit more difficult for what Terrell Owens did as a wide receiver. That's obviously an athletic position, but IFL likes to run their quarterbacks. So Chris Dixon, he has no easy task ahead of him either. So I'm glad you're back, Chris, because this is one of the topics that I wanted to discuss with you in particular. You brought this up in our group chat the other day. As you are our resident Massachusetts Pirates fan, given that Cardale Jones didn't report, and we now know it's because he got a job offer with the Big Ten Network, what are your thoughts on Anthony Russo, another XFL cast-off signing with Massachusetts?
Sure. So a lot of people want to say, oh, it's because we don't like Turo and it's all that. Competition makes everything better. We have the best ownership in the league. We have the best ownership in football. Jawad knows what he's doing. When Jawad signs a player, I have full trust in him and whatever decision he makes. And he is we need to take a step back and understand this, right? He was able to go out and get Anthony Russo on what was a week notice, right? To come here. He's already practiced with the team, I can tell you that. I don't think he's going to start this week. I think he's probably going to, start on the bench, but it gives him the opportunity to learn a different style of football and improve his game. Because I'll tell you, for him personally as a player, it's better. Like, in my eyes, I think it's better that he's on a team versus not on a team. I know a lot of guys, like I have a couple boys in the XFL, and one in particular, right? Like he trained for 2 years and he got his opportunity now and he's balling out with them, right? But it's hard when you're a quarterback and you play that position to just be throwing routes in your backyard or at a park. It's better that you're somewhere where you can take actual reps under center. And so I think he's going to compete with Joe. I love Joe. I think he's a great quarterback. And I think they're both going to make each other better. And that's what Massachusetts has always been about. If you go back to 2018, we had Sean Brackett at quarterback. Our backup was Darren Thomas. Darren Thomas started for Oregon in the Rose Bowl and won and recorded 5 touchdowns. So he was really good too. Do you think he wanted to be the backup? No. but he was a great teammate. He showed up and made Sean better, and Sean made him better. And now Darren is in the coaching role at high school, and they went undefeated. So it's all about Cardell didn't want to be a part of it, and that's a little bit on him, obviously, but it was the right fit at the time for him. He knew his football career was over, so he just decided to do something that works for him, and that's fine. And we're happy to have Anthony. I can tell you that. I'm really excited about what he brings and the option that he brings to us. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Ducon, what are your thoughts on Anthony Russo joining the IFL, in particular Massachusetts?
Well, I think the guy has a very incredible college football resume. He did some amazing things there. But on this subject, I'm going to say that whatever Chris says is what I say. Great analysis.
I love it. Chris is getting some love today. Normally, he's kind of the guy that gives us all the hot takes, but I gotta be honest, man. You're coming with some good information today. So,
killing it, man. You're killing it.
I'm very curious to see his transition to the indoor game, but I personally don't think this spells the end of Alejandro Benefield out there because, I mean, you look at his statistics, he completed like 85% of his passes last week. So it's really hard to bench a guy that's playing literally the best football that we can see from the quarterback position so far this season. But I think it's a big time signing. It turns heads. That's what, I mean, I don't want to say that Mass is about the flash in the pan signings, but they know how to keep themselves relevant. And I don't mean anything poor about Anthony Russo. I do think they're actually going to give him an opportunity, but they're always seeking out borderline outdoor talent in Massachusetts, and they always manage to bring it in. I mean, if you look across the XFL and the USFL, you can point out probably 20, 30 players that have played for Mass at one point and are prominent players in these different outdoor leagues. So it's definitely interesting to see how they continue to get great talent out there in Massachusetts. Like you said, Jawad, that his success and ownership has been proven. So, I mean, that's a big reason why he's able to get all these players out there. But the next subject on the horizon is obviously the AFL is coming in 2024. So we wanted to kind of discuss the future of the IFL. First of all, do we see Columbus and Bismarck actually returning to the league next season? And then also, do we see the IFL losing any teams to the AFL? I mean, let's start with the Arena Football statement, given that this is Arena Football League we're talking about. So I figure that's a good start.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm excited that the Arena Football League is returning. But with this industry, it's one of those things where I have to see it to believe it. There's a lot of promises that have been made that never got fulfilled. And so there's a large amount of skepticism, especially when the league announces that they're in their inaugural season going to have 16 teams. I don't see that happening, honestly. But as far as the question concerning Columbus and Bismarck, Columbus is one of those things where I'll believe it when I see it. I know that things have been financially difficult for the Germain family, and they intended to bring Columbus to the turf 3 years ago, and each year have been pushed back and back and back to where no one believes that Columbus is actually going to see the field at this point. That doesn't mean they won't. Maybe the Germain family gets another owner or something that helps them to feel like they can pull the trigger on it. As far as Bismarck goes, their biggest holdup was some legislation that would actually help them in the workers' compensation fund, and it passed. They got what they wanted. It passed in North Dakota, and all signs point to Bismarck returning, but highly unlikely in Bismarck. It looks as if they're probably going to try out the Fargo market. That is not an insider view. That's just my opinion based off of a little bit of information I got. But I do expect there to be a team in the IFL in North Dakota in 2024.
Interesting. Good bit of information there that I had not really considered, but that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad to hear that they got the bill passed that they were looking for. I knew it was workers' compensation related, but I did not follow up on the law after the fact. Chris, what are your thoughts on Bismarck coming back, as well as Columbus possibly?
Sure. So that's crazy. Ducon said that because I had a former offensive lineman for the Bucks on the show, and he said the same exact thing that he was told. He was actually told that by the team that they're moving to Fargo. Kyle Lester said that on the show, and I think they should. They were a really great organization. I had a lot of respect for their coaching staff. I mean, Rod Miller, like he was an incredible coach, really good guy. I know the defensive coordinator down there in San Diego now, Chris, he's solid too. So I hope they come back. Columbus, we talk about financial situations, right? And a lot of people think you just throw money at a team and you can, own a team, right? But it comes with a lot. It has to be, especially if it's a family owning it, has to be a family commitment. We know out there in Duke City, Gina, great owner, her and her husband own the team. And that's a partnership, right? Like, think about how many arguments they probably had at the dinner table of the team. Let's be honest, right? And so it becomes a thing where everyone has to be on the same page. So
I'd like to say 100%. One other thing.
Go ahead.
On the Columbus subject, one of the difficulties that they ran into is when they first made the announcement of what them would be. They mentioned a partnership that they had with Zoo, which was a big partnership, and all signs point to that partnership fell through. And one of the reasons they named the team the Wild Dogs was because of the partnership they had with that zoo. And perhaps the partnership and the sponsorships that they had that fell through is one of the reasons why they haven't seen the field yet. And the Germain family still would like to put a team there. I think that there's a possibility that because of that partnership falling through, they would be more open to the idea of rebranding to the Columbus Destroyers if they can get the intellectual property to do so, because of the fan base and the name that's already there in Columbus for the Destroyers. I do see that as a possibility.
That would be awesome. I personally would like to see the Destroyers come back over the Wild Dogs. There's no attachment to the Wild Dogs name. There is an attachment to the Destroyers name. In fact, I've heard many fans be like, we need a team back in Columbus. We want the Destroyers back. So I think there's a lot of fan support still there for that team. I'm very interested to see myself if either one of those teams end up coming. Obviously, Bismarck, like you said, there's a good chance that they end up relocating and do return ultimately. But I've got my doubts about Columbus at this point. And I mean, obviously, like you said, they've been pushed back 3 years. It seems like every season we're getting a different reason. And obviously they've had a bad run with COVID that hurt every business owner, who in turn, obviously these football team owners are business owners on the side. And that's where a lot of this money comes from. So I feel for them, and I do. And I know a lot of fans want to see them back or introduced to the league at some point. But I just don't know that if it ultimately happens, unfortunately. It'll be interesting to follow, that's for sure.
I would say, Sam, that if the IFL does not basically make a guarantee that Columbus will return to the field in 24, I can see the AFL announcing that Columbus will be one of their markets. I really can see that happening.
That would be my immediate thought as well. Like, hey, why not at that point? I mean, you have the opportunity to return to an original AFL market. There's got to be the desire there.
Yeah.
So we have one more topic to discuss real quick before we move on to the NAL, and we bid Krish adieu. So let's discuss the performance of the one franchise that did join the IFL this season, which would be the Tulsa Oilers. Obviously, Tulsa has not won a game yet, but I thought their performance was fairly decent given the fact that they built a roster from scratch over last season. What did you guys think? Let's start with Ducon.
Oh man, it's always hard to start out as an expansion team, especially in a very viable league like the indoor football league. But I think that they've made all the right moves. To be honest with you, Marvin Jones is a championship winning coach. He knows how to put together a coaching staff, a roster, and I think he's done a pretty decent job so far. I know players that want to be on a championship winning team aren't looking at an expansion team to go sign with. But Marvin was able to get a great deal of his old Omaha Beef players that were on his championship winning team to come down to Tulsa. And so they do have a lot of talent there. And so far, their defense is their better of the two, I would say. They probably need help at the quarterback position and maybe the O line, but their defense looks really solid. I expect their offense to get better, and for an expansion team, I expect them to win about 3 or 4 games.
I would agree. Like we said, it's always tough to be an expansion team, but I do like the roster that Marvin Jones built, and I love that you pointed out that he got many beef players. It's always tough, like you said, to get championship level players to an expansion franchise. So that was a huge win for them, I think, and I think it's a big reason why we won't see any like infighting or anything like that. I think this team is going to stay dedicated. It's going to stay focused, and they're going to continue to keep their eye on the prize, which is ultimately winning the first game for the franchise. Chris, what are your thoughts on Tulsa's performance so far? And then we'll let you get out of here.
I like Giamatti Sanders. I think he really has settled in the IFL. He'd obviously been in a bunch of different leagues. He was with Idaho, and then he was with Southwest Kansas, and then he was with Solana season for training camp for a week. But my biggest thing is that he needs to be able to move out of the pocket more. That can fall on the O line. I mean, if you look at their O line before the XFL and USFL draft, it was looking up to be like one of the best O lines in the league. I mean, Dom Logan, Shane Roberts, Larry Williams, Shane's now with Rapid City, but they were all signed with Tulsa at one point. Or at least for Shane, the contract was there. And I think that we look at Tulsa, they need to figure they can't be a 2-dimensional team. They're going to be a 1-dimensional team. So the passing attack needs to be better, but I think it will get better. I also think Josh Crockett, that he's a damn good receiver. Like, I'm surprised he's not at the next level. I mean, watching him run around there when his helmet flew off, just running down, like not even like he was just out there having so much fun. I'm like, this guy looks like he's doing, and he hasn't played football in like 2 years. He looks like he's ready to go. And so I hope, I wish the best for Josh and Tulsa, and I think the fact they were able to go help first going TJ Edwards. I know how you feel about TJ Edwards. He's your, second favorite quarterback besides the pitcher that you have on the side. But I think that TJ was struggling. He was struggling against them, and that says a lot about Coach Jones, how he was able to prepare for those guys. So all the credit in the world to Coach Jones and Tulsa.
Absolutely. I would completely agree. I think they got possibly the best coach to build a team from scratch that they could have possibly gotten. And I don't think that most people would argue that. I mean, how do you get a 12-year NFL veteran and basically legend in the indoor football game as a coach at this point for an expansion team, first-time head coach? I mean, I thought that was a huge hire. The staff there is great. It was a little interesting to see Joseph Resignaldo leave right there at the end, but we know he got a great job, outside the football world, unfortunately. But that stuff happens, Unfortunately, the pay for some of these coaches isn't where it should be, but ultimately that's part of indoor football. I mean, right now there isn't a TV contract, and with that TV contract comes a lot more money. Should that happen in the future, maybe we see some of these things change. Chris, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's always a pleasure to speak with you today. You came with a lot of great information, and you covered 2 leagues for us, so I really appreciate that. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and once again, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We will catch you in the next episode. Are you going to be on? Oh, I guess I'll catch him later. Now I want to introduce another analyst in the indoor football world and a man that most people probably know if you follow indoor football, and that's Big Boy Sports. How you doing today, man?
Good morning, y'all. How are y'all doing? I think, can y'all hear me very well?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
All right. I was wondering because technology doesn't work with me sometimes, but
hey, we've had our fair share of issues with StreamYard, so it happens sometimes. Actually fought some issues before this episode before we got on here, but it's holding up pretty well so far. But anyway, so Big Boy Sports is coming to talk some NAL with us. Thank you so much for reaching out on my post the other day. I'm glad that you kind of doubled back because I know we spoke about collabing once upon a time, and I kind of never followed up with you, and we finally get that opportunity today on this show. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
So obviously in the NAL, there's a piece of information that I feel everybody wants to talk about, and we're going to do the same, which is, of course, the Brown family joining the Albany Empire ownership group. So let's go ahead and go to Big Boy Sports first. What are your thoughts on Antonio and Eddie joining the ownership group of Albany?
Now, first things first. When I found this out, I was completely in shock. Like, I was like, you're joking, right? Antonio Brown on the Albany Empire ownership, and I had to make it the thumbnail for like the first week that I did for This Week in Indoor Football, which is the show that I do weekly on indoor football. So, on a side note, coming back Tuesday, April 4th, March Madness has been kind of busy. But going back to Antonio Brown and stuff like that, with the way his behavior has been over the past couple years, I was very skeptical of this. In truth, because the downward spiral of his career in the NFL, the downward spiral of some of the things that obviously his rap career isn't taking off really, in my opinion. NFL kind of went down the tank, so I was just completely skeptical of this. As far as I know, Antonio's only on the financial side of things, and I know there's been a couple posts lately to where he's been seen with and in around Albany, but as long as he doesn't get into too much trouble, I think it'll be all right. As for Eddie, I think this is a home run. This is a home run hit. Legend in the indoor game, in the arena game, managing the day-to-day operations as far as I can tell. That's a great fit.
I love your take. That is a great take. I personally think that Antonio brings the money. Eddie brings the arena football knowledge. But let's go to arena football statement. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I have to agree with Big Boy on everything that he said. I think that the publicity that comes from this move is great for the Albany Empire and the NAL. I think that it's actually very smart, like Big Boy mentioned, that Antonio's more on the financial side and Eddie's more on the football side of things. But I also think it's a beautiful kind of metaphor that father and son are going in on this together, because the arena football game was meant to be family oriented. And I think it's just a beautiful poetic thing that a father and son can go in on it together like this. And they're legends. They're absolute legends. So I think it's good for the game all the way around, as long as Antonio doesn't do anything, questionable in the behavioral department. And I think that they've got a pretty good organization that can handle that and forward.
I would definitely agree. I think if any organization has the solid enough foundation to take on an Antonio Brown and kind of, I don't want to say keep it in check, but kind of limit the negative exposure that can get from him, it's Albany. I mean, from the previous ownership group that is still involved, to Eddie Brown being involved, to Tom Manas at the coaching staff, I think all of the people there have the same vision, and it is about winning championships. So it'll be very interesting to see how they adapt to that. But I think, like you guys said, it's great exposure for the league. I mean, how much more heads could you possibly have turned by bringing in another owner into the NAL? But moving on to the next subject at hand today, we wanted to discuss the future of the NAL. Given that the AFL is coming in 2024, and from everything, all reports, there's going to be a lot of money behind the AFL. How do you think this will affect the NAL ultimately, Big Boy Sports?
Right now, I could tell you, like I want the AFL to show me what you got. Obviously, they have big financial backing, a big group behind them, but I want to see it. Too many times over the past 3 years I've been covering this sport, something goes wrong to where it's like, hey, we don't have this thing, or we don't have the money, or we don't have the fan support, or something like that, and we go under. It feels, AFL 3.0, I guess we can call it, as right now. I feel like we're reviving a zombie again, back from the dead. We're re-zombifying a zombie, if that makes any sense. And I just don't know right now. Like the new AFL has to show me a little bit more in order to really catch my attention. As far as it affecting the NAL, I don't think it'll affect the NAL that much. Now there are rumors that somebody could jump over, maybe 2 teams, but I don't think it'll affect them that much. I think the NAL is pretty solid league, trying to find stability, and they've been able to do it the last couple of years. They've been able to hang tight the past couple of years.
That's true. So, give me your thoughts. What are the 2 teams that could potentially jump to the AFL?
Right now, the one that obviously could jump back into the AFL is Albany. That's the first one. And the other, I'd probably say Jacksonville. Probably would say Jacksonville.
Do you think the move to add Antonio and Eddie to the ownership group was in preemptive thoughts to be in the AFL?
I don't think Albany even had those thoughts, really.
That's fair. Ducon, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think the AFL, or how do you think the AFL affects the NAL?
Man, I think once again, Big Boy nailed it. But this is a very sobering topic, Sam. It's I think we're going to have a tumultuous off season leading up to 24. But I think that the NAL has worked very, very hard to revive the game of traditional arena football. And they've worked very, very hard to make sure that their membership teams are just solid teams. And it looks like that's what they have right now. I don't think that they're that worried about the AFL. I do not see anybody jumping ship in the first year because, like Big Boy said, AFL has to show something first. They have to show that they're going to put a product out on the field. They have to actually prove to us that they are a viable league. And when they do that, and only at that point do I think any of the National Arena League teams would even be looking that way.
That's a fair assessment. Now, what about the IFL? Do you guys see any IFL teams jumping the AFL?
Not yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't really think so.
All right. I mean, I definitely agree that I think we're in for a tumultuous off season, whether it's just 16 more teams coming with the AFL like they say they are, or we see a bunch of teams jumping from league to league. However things ultimately shake out this offseason. It's going to be very interesting. But another topic, and this is actually from Ducon. What do you expect with the Nets returning to the game? I mean, obviously that's always added a certain level of excitement to kick returns. How excited are you to see them back, Big Boy?
Oh, I'm really excited. Really excited to see the Nets back. It's been so long without them. It's been so long without seeing them, and I'm glad they're back.
I would agree. Do you like the halo rule as well, allowing the players the 5 yards?
Oh yes, I really like the Halo rule. Obviously that's been carried over to like other leagues, stuff like that. Really good rule. Player safety is always important, and it's been increasingly important over the last couple of years. And I think this will be a good one. That'll be a good rule. That's definitely a good rule. I know there was a couple other NAL rules that got added as well. I think. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
There was the Tom Manas rule. I
Oh
can't
yeah,
remember
yeah.
exactly. It's something to do with kicking out of bounds.
Batting the ball into the end. I believe it's like batting the ball out of bounds or like in the end zone, and the team gets awarded 1 point or something like that. Or I can't remember. I think it was also the. I think if you kick it out of bounds, you get awarded 1 point.
Yeah.
I think. Don't quote me on that. I just read the rule book yesterday again, and I've already forgotten like a couple things in there.
Hey, you're a step ahead of me. I have not read any of the rule books cover to cover quite yet, so I do have a copy of the Champions Indoor Football League that I need to go over at some point. Ducon, what are your thoughts on the Nets coming back, and how do you think it's going to affect the NAL as a league?
Man, I'm giddier than a half schnockered chocolate-filled teenage girl at midnight about this, honestly. I'm just super, super excited about the Nets. I think it's a dynamic to the game that, for me, when I first became a fan of arena football, was such a draw. It was such a draw for me as a fan to watch the game. And so I'm really excited to have the Nets back. I do think that there will be a learning curve to start out for the first few games. Just, people are figuring out how to set the Nets up. And, the NAL has worked hard at having a cheaper alternative to what the amount of the expense that the AFL was paying in their system. And so it'll be interesting to see how the Nets and the posts hold up. But I think that after the first few games, they'll solidify it, and that it will be such a fun dynamic. Not to mention that, like Big Boy was saying, if they bat the ball out of bounds, out of the back of the end zone, or kick it out of bounds on purpose, then it awards the other team a point, a rouge. It's actually everything that what the NAL is doing is complete opposite of what the CIF is doing, and that is making the kicker a legendary position. Like, the kicker is a very coveted position all of a sudden in the NAL because of their deuce rule and their ability to to hit the nets and cause it to go ski wampus and allow. I love the halo rule. I think that that's very, very brilliant to protect the players and make to where it's not too chaotic down there. But everything about it is just an exciting environment for special teams play.
Oh yeah, remember, I mean, once the ball hits the nets, it's live, so anybody can get it.
That's very true. It makes for very exciting kick returns, which I think is important. I mean, we see other leagues trying to kind of remove the excitement from the kickoff return. The NFL moved the kickoff up, trying to kick more out of bounds, remove kickoffs from the game, kickoff returns from the game anyway, to remove injury situations. But it seems like the NAL is going the exact opposite direction, like you just said. It's making them value the kicker position a lot more, which is really something that we see other leagues going the opposite direction on. So it's very interesting to see, and I think it's going to create an interesting dynamic this season for sure. Excuse me. So with the West Texas Warbirds recently have kind of gone through a little bit of drama that I wanted to address here. I'm not sure if how much you guys have seen as far as what was said about what caused Sean Lockett not to report to the West Texas Warbirds. But ultimately, it's resulted in, I believe, a total of 6 players not showing up to the team that were originally signed. Big Boy, what are your thoughts on this situation with Sean Lockett and these other guys not reporting?
Right now, I'm not. I don't know what to really say right now because I haven't been keeping up with the NAL as much at the moment. But I was looking this up a few hours ago and early last night. I do know at least a couple players have been released, and there's actually a lot of free agents in the NAL right now. But Lockett kind of, on the RTR, Bain on the RTR as well. There's a lot of guys that are kind of just sitting around waiting to jump at the next opportunity. And, West Texas I'm still kind of iffy on them in general, but as far as I know, I think there will be a solution for those players that got released and whatnot. They're just gonna have to sign somewhere else, more than likely.
100%. It's definitely interesting to look at all overall. Ducon, what are your thoughts on this situation?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not familiar with the drama side of it by any means. I am familiar with the Curtis family of over there with West Texas. I have the most respect for them. I've talked to them quite a few times. I don't know all of what went down, why it happened the way it happened to where they refused to report. But I do think that West Texas Warbirds is a high-class organization, and I think that they got a whole Dallas Prime thing where the big brawl happens. But I watched the videos, and I remember Leif Curtis seeing him run down from the top of the arena, go down there and get right in the middle of that brawl, breaking it up, chastising fans, actually prosecuting some of the fans that were swinging chairs, and banning them from future games. Like, I think he handled that situation really, really well. And I don't think it's very fair that the West Texas have kind of got a target on their back over that issue. However, as far as like internal affairs go and what was going on with the Sean Lockett situation, I think that there's just some confusion that happened that with a little bit more communication could have been worked out. But honestly, I think they're going to be okay, and I think the players are going to be okay. Sean Lockett actually signed with Southwest Kansas Storm. He was going to be playing center for them, but he's a school teacher, and his employer wouldn't let him make the trip up to Sioux City to play last night. But he is currently with the Southwest Kansas Storm.
Yeah,
and the other players have gotten. I'm done. Thank you.
I apologize for that. His situation has been hard to follow this offseason because originally he was in the IFL. Then I believe he was granted his release, or he was suspended from the league because he had signed with West Texas of the NAL. And then he goes to West Texas. And the reports that I heard, or at least not, I don't want to say reports because they came from players that were with the team or from Sean himself. But he essentially said that West Texas was not honoring the contract that they gave him. Now, how that could possibly be the case before they ever play a game it was a little confusing to me, but that's apparently his reasoning for leaving West Texas, and now he's, like we've just said, in the CIF. So, he's kind of bounced around to every league this season, and I kind of wonder exactly what's going on behind the scenes, but a lot was made of it, and it seems like it affected the roster overall with West Texas, because at the same time that Sean Lockett was placed on the RTR list, 3 other players were also placed on the RTR list, including a fullback and a linebacker, Patrick McCawn, and a couple other players, which I was surprised by.
Yeah.
And then also I know Chris Barrett was released, and then Carlos Thompson also decided to go to the IFL instead of the NAL. And it's kind of interesting how all in a short period of time, all those guys were leaving West Texas when my understanding has been that West Texas is a fairly solid franchise prior to this. So I'm not quite sure what to make of all this information. I really think that a lot of it's overblown, but it remains to be seen. Like we spoke about with the CIF segment, it seems like every year there's a player complaining about some team, and every year we see whether or not it's true by the end of the year. But were there any last thoughts about the NAL season that's coming up before we get into predictions for week 1? Nothing? All right, give me just a second to pull up the schedule real quick. All right, so on Saturday, April 1st, the league kicks off. Oh, this is the wrong schedule. Hold on a second.
Yeah, that's probably the old one.
Yeah, 100% the schedule with Columbus still on
it. NAL starts next week, man.
I apologize. Saturday, April 8th. I apologize. We've got the Carolina Cobras versus the San Antonio Gunslingers at the Freeman Coliseum. Let's start with Ducon because you're wearing the Gunslinger shirt. What is your prediction for this game?
I think it's a high-octane offensive slugfest that I think the Gunslingers are going to pull off by a point or two.
That's definitely fair. I think this could be a high-scoring event as well. Big Boy, what's your predictions on this one?
I'm going to agree with Ducon here. Also a high-scoring, high-octane game. However, I'm going to go against the grain and go with Carolina on this one. I think Carolina has built one of the best rosters in the NAL, from my understanding right now. Definitely a title contender as well.
I would definitely agree. I like Carolina and what they've done with the roster so far this offseason. I also like the coaching staff, so it'll be interesting to see. San Antonio is a solid team. I definitely am excited to see this game coming up this weekend or next weekend. Sorry. Moving on, we have the Fayetteville Mustangs versus the Orlando Predators. Let's start with Big Boy this time. What is your prediction for this game, Fayetteville or Orlando?
This is a toss-up for me. Orlando's improving steadily. Fayetteville, brand new team, brand new ownership, brand new everything. I think we'll still have to give it to Orlando, though. But don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if Fayetteville wins this game. I'm going to give it to Orlando.
That's fair. Ducon, what are your thoughts on this one?
I agree with Big Boy. I think that Fayetteville is going to show some flashes of brilliance, but I think, Orlando is going to take this one.
That's definitely fair. Fayetteville, we just don't know what to think quite yet, given that they're an expansion team as well. It'll be interesting to see how they do in their first game. I personally am also going to lean Orlando in this one. Moving on to the last game of the weekend, 7:30 p.m. Central Time. We have the Jacksonville Sharks versus the West Texas Warbirds at the Ector County Coliseum. What are your thoughts on this game, Ducon?
Oh man, I got a lot of thoughts on this game. Surprisingly, it's Jacksonville hasn't had to travel that far in forever since they were in the AFL. I think that they're going to have a little jet lag, and I think that they're going to actually struggle a little bit early in the game, but I think they're going to come out in the second half and play Jacksonville Shark type football. And I'm taking Gibson and the Sharks.
Interesting. Big boy, what is your prediction for this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. I'm gonna also take Jacksonville this one.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue Jacksonville. Obviously, the as Chris spoke about earlier, some teams can throw money around, and Jacksonville is one of those teams. So I definitely expect them to have a pretty solid roster this year and ultimately compete for a championship. But a lot to be said about the way they build NAL teams, and there's a certain level of uncertainty because some of these players have never played both ways before. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how some of these guys transition to this game. But with an hour and 20 minutes in the books, it has been a pleasure speaking with both of you guys as well as Chris earlier. Any final thoughts, Big Boy, before you get out of here? And feel free to shout out your channel, tell us where we can find you, all that.
Well, great to be with you guys this morning. I told you, Sam. I was going to be up early. I told you, but as far as the NAL season goes, I said that the Albany Empire will repeat. They will repeat again as champions in the NAL. I might be wrong on that. I might be right on that. We'll see. You can find me on Twitter at Nation. That's capital M, capital L, capital N, and then Nation. Obviously, just Nation, like capital N and then Nation. 0001 on Twitter, but don't really follow me there for Twitter. I'm not really much of a follow back type of guy on Twitter. Like whenever I do shout out my Twitter, usually it doesn't really gain any traction. But I am on YouTube primarily. Big Boy Sports. That's the name of the channel. You can find me there. Primarily covering most of the major stuff, the NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball. Also, I cover the USFL, the XFL. Still kind of working things out with, trying to cover the USFL and the XFL right now. I also cover college lacrosse and pro lacrosse as well. So if you're a fan of any of that, come on down. And of course, the indoor arena game, the 50-yard fight.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Definitely go check out Big Boy Sports on YouTube. Subscribe today. Make sure to check out his content. There's a reason why he's on. We have a lot of respect for what he does and the content that he creates. Also, we'll have to talk about getting you on spring football reports. Every Monday we do XFL, USFL coverage. So we'll get you on there and talk some XFL, USFL stuff as well.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to y'all later.
Absolutely. Have a great rest of your day, sir. And we'll catch you next time.
All right. Peace.
Absolutely. So, Ducon, well, let's go ahead and shout out your channel. Where can everybody find you, and how can they support you and your pages?
Awesome. Thank you. I can be found on YouTube. Search ZO Productions. Arena Football Statement's the name of the channel. But that's where you'll find me there. And then on Facebook, just look up Arena Football Statement. You can follow us there. We try to keep up on everything indoor/arena football. And I do have a few final thoughts, Sam, if that's okay. Thank you.
Go for it.
Appreciate it. But nobody runs this business like you do. You're the best in the business. Thanks for putting this together. And man, I love the way that you talk to the players and the amount of respect that you show to everybody. Your coverage is simply amazing. I love it. And I think it's good for the game. And as a lover of the game, I want to just say thank you, because I think it helps to build the fan base. I think it helps people buy tickets and keep these franchises alive and playing. So thank you for that.
Well, the feeling is definitely mutual on there. I mean, when I first got into this, everybody talked about Arena Football Statement, and they still do. So I don't want to present the notion that anything has changed. So there was a big reason why I wanted to have this discussion with you. I mean, if anybody's kind of conquered the indoor game and kind of showed, how to go about covering the leagues, it's you. And you've been a big inspiration in how we cover. Well, no, it's you for sure. I mean, you were around a long time before we were, but I really appreciate the kind words that you've said about me. I mean, honestly, I never thought I'd get to this point, to be quite honest. And it's because of everybody who watches and supports these leagues. I mean, you see the same names I do, in all the chats for all the indoor football league games, all the CIF chats and stuff like that. So it's awesome to see like the community that's growing around indoor football and supporting all these different leagues. And, I would say that we all as a group, everybody who covers the indoor leagues are pretty solid. And I think it's cool that a lot of these guys are willing to come on and speak with us and stuff like this. So Thank you for your time. I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate what we're doing. What we've had in the past before you and your network came on is a lot of so-called journalists would spend their time bashing other journalists of the game. And that wasn't good for the game. They would invest way too much time insulting each other rather than actually contributing to the game. And I think that was a bad taste for potential fans. And what I see with a lot of people that are covering the game right now, and especially the Shady Sports Network, is that people are becoming more attracted to the game itself, finding a team they like that they want to follow, buying tickets, showing up to games, buying merchandise. And I think that this is a healthy thing for the game that I love and that you love. And so I just want to encourage you to keep on doing it.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we'll talk a little bit more off camera, but I definitely want to make this a little more regular episode. Maybe we can do something once a month, once every couple of weeks or something like that. But there is a lot of support from other creators as well that want to come on and talk their leagues. I mean, I've already talked to Zach Kyleman from Inside the Walls that want to come on and talk NAL. Ryan McCarthy, he wants to come on and talk some NAL. Lonnie Waite, who was supposed to come on today, he's going to discuss the IFL. And then also Matt Patton, the host of the CIF show, the Prime Cuts Omaha Beef, he wants to come on to discuss the CIF as well. So definitely would love to do this again. Like I said, we'll have to talk off camera, but we'll definitely line up another date.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate everything.
Absolutely. Well, with that being said, thank you for everybody who tuned in today. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to Arena Football Statement. That is ZO Productions on YouTube, and then also Shady Sports Network, Big Boy Sports, and then check out all the content that we're all producing, because we all love the indoor football game, and we all have a little bit different flavors. So, if you don't necessarily like my coverage, check out Arena Football Statement. He's got a little bit different coverage that's still just as good. And then same thing with Big Boy Sports, a little bit different, but just as good. And it's kind of awesome to see how we all have our different little flavors and, approaches to it. So it kind of presents a different angle for everybody.
Amen. I love that.
Absolutely. Well, we will catch you in the next episode.
Thank you.
This is Brett, and you're watching Shady Sports Network. Tune in, hit that like button.
You might wonder, what do these guys do? Player signing announcements. I never in a million years thought you would actually come on to break this news. So without further ado, go ahead and tell everybody what happened today.
Yeah, man.
I just had a workout with the Cincinnati Bengals. And signing me right out.
Without further ado, I'd like to announce that, I'll be taking my talents to Salina Liberty.
This just in, the Major League of Football is reportedly collapsing, unable to pay hotel room bills, with players being kicked out of their rooms and hotel managers asking them to leave voluntarily without issue.
And then we got Lions wide receiver Williams is debuting this week as a starter. That's something to look at as far as the eye test goes. And then another one on the eye test is Mostert. It might be coming back to Miami. And we can see if he has a role in this offense and see if he can be viable for the next couple weeks coming and help us in the playoffs and possibly towards a championship. That would be very nice because he's sitting on my bench right now.